late 1990s. In 2000, it came time when California's prison population had been growing for decades, and we drafted and wrote and raised the money and won Prop 36. Prop 36, treatment instead of incarceration, so that people getting picked up in possession of a drug who had not a big criminal record, but an issue with drug addiction, could not be sent to jail the first couple of times they got busted. And when we allocated $120 million a year for drug treatment for 5 years and kept that going, and also raised $1 billion for drug treatment, as much as possible outside the criminal justice system, right? If you look at California's growth of prisons, you will see that after 2000, all of a sudden incarceration dropped for a year or two. And then the prison industrial complex got that prison industrial juggernaut back on the rails, and they began building it up again. But that's why we got involved in 2004 in an effort to stop to reform the three strikes law. It was a flawed initiative. It was better than the flawed three strikes law, and we would have won that if Henry Nicholas, a right-wing billionaire, had put $5 million against us at the last moment. It's why we got behind in 2008, in fact, drafted and built Prop 5. My biggest defeat in my life was Proposition 5 in 2008. That would have been the biggest prison reform in the history of the United States, right? That would have reduced the California prison population by 25 to 35,000 people. It would have shifted $1 billion a year from prisoner parole to treatment and rehabilitation. It would have held the entire Department of Corrections accountable by the standards that we care about. It basically wove together all the best recommendations from every commission that had looked at prisons and sentencing in California and wove them together in one initiative. We were up 2 to 1 in the poll going in. I raised $7.5 million of hard money from people around the country. Nobody had ever raised that kind of money from criminal justice reform, marijuana reform. You guys think that's easy? Go ahead and try it. Go ahead and try it. Raising money from people on the left and the right who care about nothing except trying to reduce incarceration. And in the last 2 months, the California prison industrial complex, the prison guards union, the political establishment across the spectrum ganged up and they slaughtered us. They slaughtered us. That was my biggest defeat. But we worked hard to reduce incarceration in this country. That initiative had almost nothing to do about marijuana, but it was about ending the criminalization and demonization of other people in the state. It's why in 2010, when Richard Lee put together the initiative to legalize marijuana, and other national organizations were saying, we don't want to help you, wait till 2012, more young people show up. I called Richard, I said, if you're determined to go, I'd rather you wait till 2012, but we will help you. And it means that after Richard put in his money, we led the effort to raise the rest of that money for that campaign, to do the national media. And I will say this about Richard Lee's effort and the initiative 2010. Am I talking too fast, by the way? I know, you're not New Yorkers here, right? But I will say this. It's very rarely the case that you lose an initiative but you still win. But in 2010, that initiative was Prop 19?
Yes.
Prop 19, I still lose track of the numbers now, all these initiatives. That initiative, I think, it lost, but it won. Because it transformed the national dialogue. It transformed the national dialogue. And I'll tell you, I basically never thought it could win, with the exception of 1 week, the first week of October 2010, when the polling was still hanging up high. Normally you see the polling dive in October, but it's still hanging up there. I said, my God, this thing might do it. And then it did die a week later. But nonetheless, I think Richard Lee deserves enormous credit for that initiative in terms of laying the groundwork and moving things forward. And laying out very money to put that thing on the ballot in that way. It's also why in 2012, we did what we could to help the Three Strikes Reform Initiative here. It's also why in 2014, when Prop 47 was on the ballot to reduce incarceration and reduce the penalty for drug possession, from a felony to a misdemeanor and 5 other low-level offenses, it's why we helped with the drafting, helped with the campaign, helped with the fundraising as much as we could. And it's why, ultimately, when I look back last year and say, what am I proud about DPA in California? You know what I'm proud about? We've been fighting for years to end that crack powder disparity in California law. And we did it. We did it. A multi-year effort across the spectrum. We've been fighting for years to make sure that needle exchange programs are legal in California without any sunset provisions. And you know what? We did it. And you know what else we did last year? I don't know how many of you know that last year more people died of a drug-related overdose involving heroin or pharmaceutical opiates than died in an auto accident. Right? More. #1 cause of accidental death in America right now is accidental death from opioids, right? There's an antidote called naloxone, which if you give it to people in the overdose, that tucks them right back up, right? We want to make that stuff easily, readily available, and California became the second state in the country to say naloxone, that antidote for an overdose, will now be available over the counter in California pharmacies. None of that had to do with marijuana.